Kia ora, welcome to another exciting edition of Epic Aotearoa, Create a Better Future podcast. And in this pod today, it is Joe and I, we're shooting the breeze just a little bit, but really more importantly, what we're doing is we're pausing to reflect. So we're going to take a little pause in the series of Who Dares Wins in the service of others to be able to reflect on some of the great content, thoughts, ideas, experiences, emotions that we've felt over the last wee while as we've gone down this new route. So without further ado, kia ora, Joe. Welcome, bro.
Kia ora, brother. Good to be here. Good to see you. And good timing, I think, with everything of what you've just mentioned and this pause to reflect, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pause to reflect is again, a time for us to be able to just to settle and digest, and also for us to be able to share some of these thoughts and ideas that we've had, and also to respond to some of the messages that we've received over the last wee while as we've heard some of these really good stories and experiences of former operators and how they can tie in and link back to the work that perhaps we do individually, perhaps we do as non-military or as former military or what have you, and see how that goes. So without further ado, bro,
Nice.
my question to you to kick this off is what do you see, and it's probably worthwhile to articulate to the wider audience, what is the purpose and intent? What was your purpose and intent of the Who Dares Win series?
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's something, or a good question that you've asked, I should say, and it's something that's really started to pop out a little bit more and more frequently, I should say, too, by not only former members, and we're not gonna name any names and stuff in this session, but people sort of not really having a full picture or idea of what it is that we're trying to do. For the most part, the feedback has been positive. So former operators, current operators, and all that sort of stuff. And when I'm using that term for this context, I'm talking about people still serving, whether they're still in the New Zealand or the Australian Special Air Service, have been really positive. They've been, and that's current and or former members. All the feedback so far has been really positive from them, supportive, which is great. But at the same time, I can hear when I'm either speaking with them or when they're contacting me that they're saying things like, I think I understand where you're coming from, or I think I get what it is that you're trying to do. And that's really pleasing to hear. But I guess your question is a really good one, because this now gives us a bit of a chance to try to articulate that from my side, and it would be great for you to share your side as well. So my side, it's really starting to evolve a lot more than what we anticipated in the original context of it. So the very brief backdrop was this was all triggered by your conversation with Jared Tuoro, former professional rugby player. And then from there, I spoke with you about, hey man, I want to do this and create this particular series, initially looking at former operators within the Special Air Service, because that was the connection that I had, and I felt that if I had such a strong connection to Jared's story, then other people that have served within the same units would have a very similar connection to it if they heard your conversation with him, and or if we went down this route. And the other key part, or probably the most important part, was about making sure that it aligned with our purpose and our why and our vision. Is it going to help create a better future? If so, how is it going to help create a better future? So we started talking about some of the ideas. Okay, well, yeah, people might connect with the story. That's great. But will it move people to action? That would be even better. That would be where the gold is. If people can draw from and hear from these experiences, these lived experiences, and go, man, that's me, or I know that sounds just like so-and-so. And then they can take that next step and take some action or positive action towards trying to either dig themselves out of that hole or reach out for support. And so in many respects, from a personal and maybe somewhat selfish perspective, it's been a form of self-help for me as one example. So it's helped me with my not wanting to go speak with other strangers and stuff about it, but feeling a lot more comfortable to speak with people like you or people that have served in a similar unit that have probably have struggled with their own transition journey or maybe still struggling, And I found that a lot easier. And I found that a means or a method, again, somewhat selfishly, that has helped me because I've been able to glean from their experiences and apply them in my own life. So trying to recap in a nutshell to finally give my perspective and the direction of where we're heading is it's still aligned with creating a better future. It's open to not just members that have served in the Special Air Service or in the Special Forces, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. And the intent is for, hopefully, that people, as they listen to it, as they hear these experiences, that they can take from them tips or tools, add them to their tool belt or whatever, and apply them in their own lives to help them progress. And the final part that I'll add is that when we're conducting these podcasts or these conversations with people, we're focusing more so, hopefully that's what's coming through anyway, but we're trying to focus more so on the person, on the individual, rather than this, they've had amazing careers and they're doing amazing things, which is awesome. And that's really interesting for people, particularly for myself as well, to hear their story and their backstory and what they've done and what they're doing now or post that. But when I say focusing on the person, is that at the end of the day, each of us are unique. Obviously, we understand that, but we are able to connect and relate to people through their experiences or through their stories. Whether we've lived and walked that path or not, there's something that connects, in my opinion anyway, rightly or wrongly, there's something that connects each of us in some way. And whether that connection happens through listening to an audio podcast like this, or seeing the video, or seeing somebody do something amazing, or see somebody striving for something great or bigger than themselves and or failing, but then picking themselves up and still going again, there's something about that people are able to connect to. So I don't know what the end date is for here, and I don't think we know what that end date is in terms of this particular series, because as we talk about this a bit more, the doors are just really starting to open one after the other into so many other things, which those individuals again align with the intent of this series, in the service of others, who dares wins. So there's a lot of detail and maybe a lot of things to unpack in there, but if people can just take away and understand that it's aligned with trying to create a better future, connecting with the individuals and their stories and their experiences, and trying to share those in a way that people will be able to not only listen to, but more so connect with, and take what they can and use it to apply in their own lives to create their own better future.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm glad we talked about that, Joe, because it helps solidify where the series is going. Because I suspect in some minds it'll be, whoa, Special Forces, SAS, well, we're going to hear war stories, and kicking in doors and all that sort of stuff. But if you listen to the podcast, it's not so, and it's nothing about security or anything like that, whether it's OPSEC or national security. We're not even getting in that space. It's exactly as you said. It's about the individual. And one of the things that you reminded me is when I had the conversation with Jared Toro, former professional rugby player, and the transitions that he went and the things that he felt, that you could feel that as he talked to you. And I remember us having that conversation and how that made you feel.
Yeah.
So if it made you feel that way, what about the others? And we're talking about a high performance space in the Special Forces, but that high performance space relates to work, it relates to sports, it relates to families, it can relate to anything you like, and adapt it. And some of the lessons that we've heard are really powerful. So I guess from my perspective, it's really the intent and purpose is really to capture those individual stories about individuals who have done extraordinary things, who don't see themselves as that, but also helping or looking for a way in which they continue to serve others through that shared experience.
Man, that's perfect. Yeah, I love that example and the explanation you've just said. Awesome, bro.
Yeah, cool. So I'm glad we talked about that, because I have had, I think, a message or two, or I've seen a message or two where they go, oh, I want to do this, or I want to be that.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. But we also look at the commonalities between, say, Bill Bestick, or Dion Jensen, or Harry Moffat, or whoever we're talking about, right? And we can see that there's that common thread of having that desire that just becomes overriding
Yep.
to the point that this becomes your sole focus, but you find ways to be able to achieve that goal. And it's interesting hearing you guys go back and forth, and also myself having the privilege to jump in on a couple of those podcasts to be able to hear it in my ears that, man, it didn't matter. I was going to get that piece of paper. I was going to rip it up, throw it away. It was like, yeah, there was nothing else going to stop me. So, yeah.
It's interesting, and it's a great point that you mentioned the similarities that there are. I was mentioning to you, I had the privilege, Damien Porter had me on his podcast. We'll put the links and stuff in the notes in the description and stuff after this, but it was really great to not only reconnect with him, but it was just really, I guess, not timely, but a really nice reminder for me. And I was sharing this with my wife the other night. I was just saying, man, I'm really glad that some really important people in my life, and people that, or people that have gone on to be either very notable or successful or whatever, that I was just, that I was a decent person to them when I met them, if that makes sense, without trying to toot your own horn or anything like that. I was just really pleased that I had treated these individuals with a level of respect that I would have liked if I was saying hello to somebody. And it was nice that, I don't, and I don't think I mentioned this on this podcast, but I don't remember exactly the conversation that I had with Damien, but he remembered it. And he said that I was the reason that he stopped drinking alcohol. And that really impacted me. The fact that he remembered that, and the fact that whatever it was that I shared with him moved him enough to make a decision, which has gone on to be a really powerful part in his life in terms of him feeling better, and he's right in that health and wellness space, and helping people cope with managing their stress and their nutrition and exercise and all that sort of thing. He's doing some really awesome stuff, and he's picked the brains of some really great people, like the All Black strength and conditioning coach Gilly, who he's on the nickname basis with that guy, and he's had him a couple of times on his podcast, and he's had a whole bunch of other people. So it's just really nice to hear those things. But when you're talking about the individuals, and these individuals who don't, see themselves as being this significant thing, even worth speaking to, or worth, the common challenge that we've found is, nobody'd want to listen to my story. It's like, who'd want to listen to my story? And that again just ties back to my own thoughts that I've developed, I guess, over time, is that everybody has a story, and you've shared everybody's stories and experiences are valid and relevant, and they can in some way, shape or form help others. Now, can we learn a lot more from, specific people's experiences? Maybe. I don't know. And I don't know if there's anybody that can specifically answer that, but can we learn from people that have either worked in or served in, whether that's professional sports or high levels of business, or served in quote unquote the special forces, for want of an example, in terms of what we're doing? My honest opinion is absolutely. I think people can. I think people can learn from those, because there's value in those experiences. That's not to diminish anybody else that hasn't necessarily worked or served in those places. But I guess in terms of trying to unpack and provide some content that's hopefully interesting and or at least intriguing for people, people having that background is somewhat interesting and or intriguing. And then when people are interested or intrigued, they tend to pay a little bit more attention. When you're paying a little bit more attention, at least in my experience, you tend to pick up a few more things, or a few more nuggets, for want of a better term, and they stay with you. And so that's, again, ties in with what you've shared already, but as part of our intent of what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I loved how you shared that and talked about that, because again, I think the thought that came to mind is that part of what we're trying to do here is that in some sense you could say we revere the journey that the person has undertaken, but we're not worshipping the person, right? Yeah.
Great point.
So, and I think maybe I'm just trying to make it clear, and I mean this very, very respectfully. It's just that some people, and particularly the people we've had on board, their journeys have just been so interesting that how can we not learn from that? And why would we not want to learn from them? And so this is actually leading me into something, and you've just finished off on that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get a little bit, I guess, a little bit more specific, Joe, if that's all right.
Yeah, all good.
Because you've led off mostly in this series, and I've been fortunate enough to jump in on a couple with Nick and with Moff, and
more to come.
More to come, yes. But it's been, I tell you what, it's been amazing from my perspective, just listening to these gentlemen. Great blokes. They're really, really nice people. Also, being able to connect with Dion and Bill. Yeah. And just some of the comments that they shared, just briefly, but you can tell the genuineness in there. So I really appreciated that. So I guess it flips back to, because you've interviewed or been part of all the interviews so far in the series, so Who Dares Wins in the Service of Others, what would be some of the things that you've found perhaps the most insightful things, the most surprising things perhaps, and the third one I'm just going to leave for a second because I think that one might be a little bit more to unpack.
Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Good points, because as you said, there's been so much to take away from every single one. Even, I was going to say I wasn't involved in Helen's one, but I was in sort of a background annoyance kind of way. I was, yeah. But yeah, man, if I go through, I mean, I don't have my notebook in front of me because I was jotting heaps of notes when I was going through and doing those interviews. The only one I didn't have my notebook in front of me was the one with Mids. So maybe I'll start there. But some of the things that really stuck out to me, and there's a whole bunch, but when Mids spoke about, I asked him a question about what was the most challenging part for him. And I think he mentioned it was when we finished the dunes phase, we had a bit of a feed and we had this 2-minute break, whatever it was. And then we were back on the trucks and heading off. Yep. And then we were into the close country navigation phase. And I think he said for him that time, if I'm remembering correctly, was one of the most challenging times for him that he found difficult on selection, because he was now back in his own head. He was by himself, and you didn't have the strength of the group. And I don't know if those are his exact words, but that's sort of how I processed it when he was speaking. We didn't have the strength of the group there with you. And when he spoke about that, it's really surprising how not only similar people are that go or that are successful and make it to those units, but also how we view things quite differently too. So for me, when he shared that, I really loved that he shared that, but I was on a different, like from my perspective, and I guess I can tie this back to, I guess, my upbringing, but from my perspective on that, I found that really interesting that somebody like this, who I had the utmost, or still have the utmost respect for, senior soldier, he's been in the army more than 10 years by this stage, 12, 13 years. He's a sergeant. He's been through a whole bunch of courses. No doubt he's been involved in lots of things at times where he's been on his own as a soldier. And I found that really surprising, because for me, I loved it when I was on my own. Personally, I was like, yes, it was like, almost like a level of freedom. And also it took it to another level of drive and commitment that I need to, in order to be worthy to make it to a unit like that, I need to show that I can do this on my own, that I don't need somebody next to me encouraging me or telling me that it's all right. Although that's great. Absolutely, that's great, because there's been some hard times when it's been, and I shared, when Nick was there and helped me across that river crossing. Yeah. That I can't express enough how much gratitude and how much support and lift that gives you. But for me, I really enjoyed those moments being alone on selection, because in those times for me, it was like, well, it's up to me. I've got to do this. Otherwise, if I don't, then I shouldn't be here in the first place. So, but tying that back to my upbringing, I think some of that for me was because I was, and sorry, Mum, in advance, but I was left by myself from a very young age, regularly, daily, because my mum would work 2, sometimes 3 jobs. And so she would be gone early in the morning before I start school. And she would be back, and, I'm probably gonked out, crashed out on the couch or back in my bed. So I was used to fending for myself. Breakfast, get me some lunch ready if I took lunch, and then time to make me some food, and she left me some very basic instructions. Don't eat all the food in the house was one, and don't burn the house down.
Don't burn
was
the house
two.
down, I was going to say.
So they were very, very simple, very basic, and I was able to follow those instructions, thankfully. Not all the time. There were times when I ate all the good food anyway that she might have wanted some of, but that's it for another time. But those things, I think, and that was just a constant as I grew up. I was used to being on my own. So that really struck me with Mids. I loved how he was able to overcome that, though, and the funny stories that he shared, and just the things that he found humorous. Like, I could imagine him, and I understood what he meant when he was saying he felt like he was sprinting away, but he was probably just jogging on the spot, trying to get away from the DS when they're coming to drive them back. But to his credit, like he said, he never got caught. He never got driven back. He was too good for that. I was like, as for me, I got caught a couple of times and driven back a couple of times. But that was really cool to hear that experience. But I found it interesting. If I go to Dion Jensen, what I found intriguing and interesting about him was I still, and it's probably a question that I should have asked him, and that's all right, I can ask him another time. But I just wonder, how and when did he develop that confidence? Because when he speaks, and when I've looked at his videos and stuff, and when he's sharing and communicating his message, it's powerful. Like I really feel it. And it's a great talent and skill that he has. And it's obviously something that he's worked on. But when he spoke about, a band 4 baggie, that's sort of, again, to your point, somebody who's not trying to put himself out there as being this great and all-knowing oracle or guru or anything like that. But what he does have and what he does share and what he's capable of delivering really resonates, and it's helping a lot of people. So that really struck me when he spoke about that. Also, when he asked me about, there's the connection for myself, the value, identity, and purpose, and that sort of thing. It left me thinking. It really left me thinking, okay, well, value, purpose, yeah, I'm happy with that. My identity, and I sent him a couple of messages, and he called me back, and then he's given me some tasks to do, which I've got to follow up on and do that, and I will do it because I wrote them down. But I really enjoyed that. As well as the hikers, that bits and pieces. So
warning order.
It gave a warning order, so straight away they must be baddies. But so that was funny. But then I thought the grocery shopping one, I was thinking, well, that's probably just normal for most parents. Leave the suki bubba ones at home and take the ones that can actually help and do stuff. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to you speak with my wife, with the things that she shared. I sat off to the side, often out of view because I didn't want to put her off. But listening and trying to pay as much attention as I could to what she was sharing, and really struck me a lot of things there that I was just oblivious to, didn't take any notice of, right from not even asking her if she wanted to move and live in Australia, through to not considering the isolation that she would feel and that she felt and that she went through. And just, like she was very disconnected. And I, even to that day, until you had conducted that interview and until she gave those answers, I was still oblivious to all of that. Like, I was just in my own head and in my own, I was all right because I could talk with people that I was serving with. But I never gave my poor wife a second thought in relation to that, and it never popped up in my head. So I was so glad that she shared that stuff, because there may be operators still now that may have been completely oblivious to that. But man, just if I could change anything, if I could go back and do that time again, knowing what I know now, that would be a great thing, so that old saying, hindsight is a beautiful thing. So there's a lot more that struck me. Bill Bestick, man, I think I hung off every word that guy was saying, not only because he's a friend, somebody who I really admire and respect, but somebody who's been a great leader and has always been he's always been there roundabouts in my head in terms of, I wonder how he's going, wonder what he's doing, what would Bill do in this situation. And a lot of things, at those times, if only I had have thought about that a bit quicker when I was in Australia with some things, I probably could have made some better decisions. But it's interesting that when those mistakes would happen, I would often think about Bill and how good it would be to connect with him. And so not long after I got out, he was one of the first people that I was able to connect with, and he gave me some guidance about what to do in terms of going onto the circuit and things to be mindful of and all that sort of stuff. And so much so that I bounced my CV off him so that he could review it and check it and then give me some pointers and tips, which he did, and before submitting it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just an incredible guy. And it was interesting for me, right, to hear him speak about, and to, when he spoke about, he was like, when the lady put him on the spot and said, so do you think everybody wants to be trained the same as you?
Right.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, I could never imagine Bill being tongue-tied and stuck like that. So I found that really interesting, really funny, but also it helped me have an even greater appreciation and respect for him, as well as the guests that we've had so far. So those are just real, I've probably talked a bit longer than I should have, but on those ones, there's some brief snapshots of those ones. And then moving over to the guys in Australia, like Nick, for one, is just great to, it feels like everything's the way it was when we were serving together side by side, that guy and I. And wonderful man, great leader in the things that he's doing and that he's done. And I just really admired what he's been able to do, how he's gone about doing it. And what I mean by that is I listened to a couple of his interviews prior to, and how he took ownership of stuff and took it on himself to make sure that things got done, and that if he didn't do that, there was not sure of the exact words, but he felt this overwhelming sense that he needed to do it. He needed to take charge, and he needed to do it, and he couldn't. There was going to leave no room to blame anybody else if things didn't work. It was going to fall on him, and that in and of itself was just really eye-opening for me about him, because he's done that. He's proven that, and everything that's happened so far, and the stuff that I was lucky enough to start with him, but then left, and how he's just carried that on. So, and in line with that flows into people that I've since spoken to that train at the mill, that have the utmost respect for Nick, as they should have, who've contacted me, and now they're, Tom is one of those guys who's in contact with you and I, and he's somebody that we'll have on the podcast coming up, and just really excited about what he brings and what he adds, and his passion for, and his story. So I'm not going to give that away on here, but Tom Totka, great guy, and looking forward to having him on the podcast.
Absolutely.
So Nick's journey, and also the other key part that really got me was when Nick spoke about widening or broadening the bandwidth to be able to receive information. And he said, I think it's partly by design with the cycle, because I was quizzing him because I thought it was all a test. I thought, no, they're just trying to get me to call them by their nickname, and then they're going to kick me out of here, all that sort of stuff. And I really liked his perspective, because even up until that day when we sat and spoke with him, I still didn't see it like that. I just really thought, man, that was different to New Zealand. Still effective, but different, and effective in a different way. Whereas when Nick spoke about it, it helped me understand that, wow, there's a method to that madness as well. There's a method to the Kiwi way, which works, which is proven. So it takes nothing away from that. But there are other ways. That old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There are multiple ways and facets of drawing and getting not only the best people, but getting the best out of people. And I really liked, I mentioned on the podcast with yourself and with Nick, that it was really warm. It felt like a really warm, welcoming situation. And I love the way Nick then articulated and said, well, you've really proven that you can be a knuckle dragger, and you can put up with hard things for long periods of time. And now it's about trying to create this environment or that environment that's going to allow you to take on more information and try to apply it rapidly in the context and in the way in which you've been trained or taught. So that was really insightful. And then if we dive over to Harry Moffat, Lincoln legend, great man.
Legend.
Yeah. That guy, I loved how he spoke about, first I loved how he acknowledged his wife, like the most the thing that he's most proud of. That was awesome to acknowledge his woman that way. And also to the other part, it got me because we didn't know until he mentioned it at that moment that it was his 26-year wedding anniversary and he's on our podcast. I was like, I would have been like, oh, sorry, bro, I'm busy that day. Can we do it another day? But just a real testament to the guy himself and how he goes out of his way to try to make time for people, to try to make people feel included. And just on both Nick and Moff, I loved the way that they really acknowledged you in the podcast, even prior to us hitting the record button, during, and even at the end when the video was turned off and not recording. I was really grateful for the way that they acknowledged, you're not somebody that served in the unit, but you're a great person, great human being. And it was really nice that they took the time and acknowledged you that way. So that really stuck out for me. And then Moff's words around the rituals to keep relationships strong, to find those reset moments if you need them or to take them. And I loved his, I can't remember the exact meal. I'd have to go back and listen to it, but the ritual that he had.
Oh, the lamb chops.
Lamb chops, that's it. Potatoes and broccoli and that sort of thing. Lamb chops, and I remember broccoli. I think potatoes was in there, but that stuff, the rituals that they'd have, the places that they would go, the time frames for when family and close friends or family and friends could come and put in boundaries in place. That stuff was awesome. We spoke a little bit about some of the operational stuff and some of the sad stuff as well, which struck me as well when he, the guilt that he felt as the driver of the vehicle and losing one of his best mates, or one of that team's best mates and one of the unit's best operators and all that sort of stuff. There's those hard moments in time, but if I try to I guess paint a picture of some of the things in response to your question, and this is I know it's long-winded, but it's still brief in my book in terms of the content and all the people that we've had on there so far speaking in this as part of the series. It's only a real snapshot and only scratches the surface, but again, of the individuals, of the people that we've had on, not worrying about all the cool war stories and stuff like that, and they have got some pretty cool stories. But it's bigger than that, and it's hard to frame or to articulate as well as what I'm capable of doing anyway. But what we're trying to do by having our guests share these experiences is bigger than them as the individual. It's bigger than our podcast as a medium or as a platform or as an entity to distribute their messages. And it's bigger. It's bigger than the units that they've come from, bigger than the places that they've served or the companies that they've gone on to build or the qualifications that they have or whatever. It's bigger than that. It's hard to find the words to explain that as well as what I'd like. But I think anybody that's taken the time so far, and we've got some evidence of that have taken the time so far to listen to follow along, to leave us a comment or a few, or send us an email or a message, is testament that we're on the right path. And so I think these messages and the things that have come about as a result have been things that have really impacted me. So to the last part, what's maybe surprised me? What surprised me is how much, attention's not the right word, but how much people have gone onto YouTube in particular. Maybe it's because of the power of video or whatever. But how much people seem to be really drawn to these experiences. And I hope, it seems like what I'm getting, or what we're finding, is that people are drawn to them hopefully because they can take something away from them and utilize them. And that seems to be a lot of the messages that we're getting. But that really caught me by surprise. So I didn't expect us to have this many views and or this broad of a reach to people that would be interested in hearing these things. I knew that there would be some, but not to the level that we're at now. And even then, I think that may only be just because it hasn't become as well known as what it right now as maybe it has the potential to be. But at the end of the day as well, that's not the intent. The intent isn't to be the biggest and the baddest. The intent is to get these messages and these experiences and these stories out so that they can help other people create that future that they want. So, I hope I captured everybody that we've interviewed so far in this series. Did I? So
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, because then they have somebody, hey, you didn't mention my one, so you got nothing from mine. What are you doing?
We'll put a disclaimer and just say, and all the others.
And that's a great disclaimer, but that'll go down like a lead balloon, particularly if I've missed out any of the boys that have served in the unit. They'll be like, "Don't you blink and put me with the and all the others category." It's like, you better mention me by name. They'll be hassling me off camera. They would never say that on camera. Yeah, okay.
That's why you run point on the series, bro.
So I can take all the heat. Take all the heat, right?
I sit in the middle.
Okay, so hopefully that helped answer that question, because I'll let you ask the last one, because you were holding off on one you were saying, but I would love it for you don't have to go through each person, but I'd love for you to give your perspective of what you've gleaned from it as well, man.
There's just so much, and I mean you've talked about it really nicely. So I guess some of the things that immediately pop to mind is your good wife Helen, and just the emotion that was felt. I mean, it was just, I didn't expect that, to be honest, but it was just raw and genuine, and it just goes to show the other side to you guys. The operators, they're doing all the dirty stuff. What do you say? If you don't like being cold and wet, or
wet, cold, and hungry, or hot, sweating, and dehydrated.
But you're going through that, but then we have the operators at home, as we talked about, and the emotions that they must feel, wondering, is my husband going to come home, or what's my husband going to be like, when they are home, that feeling. And it wasn't just you; it was like Bill shared it. It was, I think, Nick alluded to it to some extent, and
Moff.
Harry as well, and Moff, so there was that. There was the warmth is a great word. I felt that from Moff and Nick. They just made me feel like I was included. I actually felt like I was going, man, I need to go to the shop, get a toy AR, run around, practice.
You'll be like Nick.
You'll be like Nick. Pow 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 pow. But one of the things, again, it's the same thing. Bandwidth, and then all I could do was connect that back to what work, and think about in the civilian world, bandwidth. That, because in the corporate world, it's easy to get overwhelmed with work and pressure piles on, and we reduce our bandwidth. We're no longer effective. Mids, I just love that. Man, it's the stories. The one that cracked me up is the one you said, is it the close country nav? Stuff? And he's looking at his map and going, nothing makes sense. It's the wrong map.
He must have been set up, man. Set up.
And then in the part you said, I can imagine him go, you ain't going to get me. You're not going to get me. And he's and he's probably just shuffling.
I think he was saying that they were laughing at him, trying to get away. Like they could have caught him if they wanted to. But I think because the rules were where to stay off the tracks, and I'm pretty sure. Well, he wasn't on the roads. He wasn't on the track, so he was. He's a stickler, but he was a stickler for the rules too. He did the right thing, man, from what I remember of him, anyway.
Yeah. I guess the Dion to me was about systems. I think I shared a thought because I was listening to his podcast. I listened to it off and on. Yeah. And I was at the supermarket this night. So it must have been last week, I suspect. And I was listening to him talk. It was near the end of his podcast. And I had to text you, and it was late at night. I knew it was late at night for you because but I said, look, this podcast is the medium. So the medium is the message. Our message is also the medium. But we need to look at our systems behind that, and that's what I took away from that. Is what are our systems that we need to something we're having conversations about. But this is important for us, this part here, because this medium here of being able to share it either on YouTube or audio, the message behind it is this, that forms our kaupapa of creating a better future. But there's one thing that besides the cricket from off. And the sadness in the story he shared, with regards to what you said, a good friend, team friend, operator that lost their lives in Afghanistan, was the word tapering. He said, and he used actually two words. One, he talked about not mental health but brain health.
Brain health, yeah.
That connected with me, and he said he doesn't use the word transition, but he used the word tapering.
Yeah, great.
And that connected with me, because it's like, when you taper something down this way, we're slowly moving into a different space, as opposed to try and transition. Well, to be respectful and fair, when I think of transition, I think of Michael Jackson, the video Black and White. When he goes, black.
Yeah.
That's what.
How does it go again? You do.
It's black. It's white. But see, there's no transition there on this one. But if you imagine my head transitioning to something else, then you see what I mean. That's what I see. So it's like almost immediate.
Yeah.
Whereas he's talking about tapering into something else, which is a gradual journey.
I love how you mention that, because and it may be different. Some people might view transition as a tapering process, but I'm more aligned with what you've just shared there. Yeah, transition for me is like, okay, I'm a soldier now. I'm not a soldier, but I've still got all those traits of a soldier, and you've put me in this environment now. I'm still going to be the same as what I was there, and it's going to be very difficult or challenging. So that black or white piece that you talked about, I might be this person or this color here, say black here, and now I'm white here in this particular environment or setting or whatever. But there's been no gradual tapering process if that makes sense. So I think is that what you were trying to explain?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So that word really connected with me. So I guess those are the things I've taken away, and just the overall general warmth that these people have come on. They were sharing their stories on the hope that it will help someone else.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's great points, man. I really love how you've shared that, and your views and perspectives and the way that you articulate things, because it's really good for me to hear from your perspective how those things are going. And I do think, and this might lead into, I don't know, actually I think you had another question, but I'll try and get this out of my head before I forget. But I have really enjoyed the feedback and comments that we've got from people about I don't know if it's balance, but the dynamic between you and I being involved. And a lot of those had come from former operators within the unit before we had the opportunity to have you with Nick and Moff. They were just really complimentary of the way that you handled and conducted not only the conversation with myself, but also with Helen. And they were like, bro, you should have, you fellas should be doing it together. You fellas need to do this together with the guests that you have, because there's that contrast, and there's a person with a genuine desire to want to know, but also very intelligent and has a different viewpoint, or maybe sees things from a different angle, or maybe interprets the words, the terminology, or the lingo that's been shared or discussed in a different way. And you ask really meaningful or great questions, I think, anyway. So that's an acknowledgement. I can't mention the names of those people that have passed on that, but I gave you a call up and let you know, and it's been great. I felt like it's made it even better than just having one person conduct it. It's great having you there, and I think our guests have appreciated it as well from a different perspective. I mean, we haven't annoyed anybody yet, touch wood.
No, not yet.
So we'll keep doing what we're doing.
Thanks, Barry. And again, to those, and I'll put this out there, thank you for those that have shared those sentiments. Really appreciate that. In some selfish ways, it's helping me connect with my mum and dad, and also my uncles that have served and have served operationally as well. Vietnam, Malaya, end of World War II, that sort of thing. In those situations, not having been there myself, but to be able to hear that these people are sharing these things and be able to connect in some way, which actually leads me into this question. And I guess something we shared off camera, and this was something I guess Bill was talking about, but I won't share the exactness of that, but rather than the way he described a certain event And it made me think about, okay, well, if Bill's in this certain event and he's with somebody that has passed on, yeah, and that's a challenging situation for him because it made him reevaluate his direction, his plan B. I guess it made me wonder about you, bro. Yeah, and the how you must have felt in certain situations. So my question is, of the things that you've shared, has there been anything that's really been challenging that has touched you in a way that's just made you feel, wow, it's brought back some memories, some thoughts, some feelings that I hadn't come across for a while?
Yeah, I think everybody that we've had so far, and I'll come back to Bill's, has caused me to reflect and think about things that that haven't really popped up, and probably to that point, and maybe I just take this time to elaborate more. You know, it's interesting. The more I have these conversations with either yourself or with guests that we're lucky enough to have on, or where I've been fortunate to be a guest on Damien's one, each time it triggers something, and then I hopefully use that time to try to elaborate a little bit more on that. And so in Damien's one recently, I elaborated a little bit more on, you know, poor decisions that I made in NZ and in Australia, and how I could have handled those better, but with the intent to try to speak to whoever the listener is on the other end that might be pig-headed and stubborn like me, and thinks that the rules don't apply to them when you're in the army, when the truth is, when you're in the army, you basically pull your head in and do as you're told, or you leave like I did. So to your question, though, has there been anything? Yeah, there's been a number of things each time, and I might look to just share two here. So one of the first ones is, for me, I've been very, very good at burying stuff deep within myself and just not bringing them up, like putting a camouflage over it. For those that have served in the military, or those that are familiar with it, you don't need to have been in the SAS. You probably more the infanteers would know, or anybody in the army that's been through some sort of basic training. You go out on field exercise, and you have these field exercises to do, and part of them you learn all these different skills, and one of the things is to dig into stage 3 with an OHP. So that's basically digging your fighting pit and your sleeping bay out in the field, usually in open country, and that's what you live out of, and that's what you fight out of, and that's what, you know, all that sort of stuff that you're doing in there. But prior to that, you turf the ground, so you cut out all the turf, you fold it over so it's just dirt there. Then you start digging. You might dig your fighting pit first, and then your shell scrape, or your shell scrape and your fighting pit. Once you've got that dug down, then you carry on to the next thing. There's a whole bunch of other tasks that are happening. Oftentimes you're digging by yourself while you're in a pair within your pit. So one person's off doing other tasks while you're stuck there digging, and the changes happen and all that sort of stuff. But eventually you get all the way down, and that whole area that you've just dug out of, so you've now got your sleeping bay pit, you've got your fighting bay that you fight out of, you've got your arc set and staked, and you've got your overhead protection or your OHP on there. Then you re-turf the ground, so you cover it all back up with the grass or the tussock or whatever you have there that you had earlier turfed, and you stay hidden in there, and you only get up and move, and you go out and do things when you need to. Well, if I use that analogy on myself, I've done that with a whole bunch of stuff that from a military perspective, and just buried them, or tried to bury them, in the hopes of moving forward, if that makes sense, in the hopes of making progress. But all I've done by doing that, which I understand more clearly now, is I've just been holding myself back, and my wife sort of alluded to it. If I had been in the space that I'm in now, like, because it's only been maybe about a year and a half, thereabouts, maybe close to 2 years, if I could have been more aware of that, or cognizant of that, and done some of the things of what I've taken action on and done now, things could have been a heck of a lot better. My kids wouldn't have felt as scared to come to me. My kids wouldn't have felt like they couldn't have a joke with their dad, or they wouldn't have felt like, is it okay to go say goodnight to dad and tell him that I love him or whatever. So I've been my own worst enemy in terms of feeling like, so in my head, I'm feeling like I'm doing what I think is the right thing to do by not bringing up stuff or trying to bury stuff and hide it and then camouflage it, put on a happy face and go to work and do this and do that. oh yeah, cool, yeah, Joe's happy, he's this and that, but inside he's like in turmoil or whatever the case might be. So that's been one thing that stuck out for me. And then to your point, when Bill gave the clearer details around the sad passing of John McNutt, I guess to a degree, and that self-reflection point that he hit, it made me, there was a moment when I was on the circuit, in the private security circuit, and there was a very good friend of mine who was looking for work, and I was able to sort of point him in the direction of a particular company at the time, and and he got picked up, he got some work and stuff there. Now that what would have been, I'm pretty sure, his first trip with that particular company, because he got out of the regiment and that as well. There was a contact that they had on the main expressway, and one of their guys got killed, and then I heard it was an Australian, and my heart sank. I straight away thought that it was a good mate that I had said, hey, go with this company, and it completely changed my view. It didn't change me in terms of, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. It changed me in the context of, I'm not recommending anybody to go to any company anymore ever again, like not in that space. Turns out it wasn't him, which was great, but still at the same time, very, very sad for the individual, for that team, for that company, for their family, for that person's family, etc., that they've left behind. I didn't know that person, so it wasn't as close a connection for me. But up until that point, till I'd got confirmation, because I was texting, calling, then finally spoke with him and heard his voice, I was just relieved. There was no other way to describe that. And I had other friends hit me up and ask me about job opportunities, and there were jobs. There were jobs going at that time, anyway. But I just let them know. I said, "Sorry, bro, I'm not. Nothing against you. And I explained to them why, and I was really glad that they heard me out and that they understood where I was coming from. Really good operators, very, very skilled. But everything changed for me in that moment when this particular person got killed in the Middle East, in Iraq, as a private security contractor, because I thought it was one of my close mates who it's not me that got him the job, but I certainly pointed him to that company, and that company picked him up. And so because of that, it just changed my whole viewpoint. I was like, no, I'm not doing that ever again. And I never did. So I never put forward anybody to say, hey, you should go to this company, or this company should pick them up, because that was a worry of mine, that if something did happen and that person that I've said, hey, go to this company, and he got there off his own merits, his own resume spoke for itself, not because of me. But I just couldn't help but feel that if I played a piece in that and saying, go to that company, he goes to that company, gets picked up, gets utilised, and bang, all of a sudden he's not there. I don't know how I would have coped with that personally. So that was probably one of the biggest ones. And I guess when Bill was speaking about John, I couldn't, and I didn't ask him off camera, but I couldn't help but feel that Bill felt a sense of that, because he had encouraged John to join the unit. He had done it, and he's a very close friend of his, much closer to Bill than he was to me. Like I said, he's just, my memories of John were, he was this blanking fit dude on selection, and he blitzed me on the 60 clicker, and I was like, what the? This officer's just passed me. But yeah, so from Bill's perspective, I haven't asked him about it, but maybe that might have been part of what was running through his head. Is like, this is one of my closest mates. I told him to come here, that he should do this. But ultimately, that's not on Bill. And if my friend had have passed, it wouldn't have been on me. But, you try and tell Bill that, or you try and tell me that at that time, I wouldn't have been having a bar of it. So those have been the couple of things, mate.
Wow, that's powerful. The way you describe it, and it's making me reflect back to what you've just said, and I can imagine that survivor guilt, and Moff talked about the survivor guilt he had. Yeah, so just the power of that. I mean, it's just incredible. But thank you for sharing that, because it's not easy. I can imagine it's not easy to be able to share that, especially when you're talking about a close friend. And I can only imagine what it would have been like. Oh, go to this company. They're awesome. And then all of a sudden, that happens, because we're not talking about, as to paraphrase Tana Umanga, we're not talking about tiddlywinks. Right? We're not talking. This is serious stuff, but this is life or death stuff, and you're living on the edge, I can imagine, for quite a bit of it when you're deployed on an operation or what have you. So thank you, Bray, for sharing that. I guess this is leading me on to something that I wanted to touch on just a little bit, actually, because we've got some messages that have come through. But before we get into the messages, and this tied in with this, is we've talked about the purpose and intent, and in a minute or in a few minutes' time, we want to talk about the application of Who Dares Wins in the service of others, the series. Because I think that's important. And you alluded to this earlier. Yeah. But where do you see the series going? So it's tied back to the intent and purpose. So where do you see it going? And maybe if we can start sharing some of these messages as well. So maybe I'll share that with you.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll go to where I feel I see it going, and it'd be great for you to share your points as well. Either confirm or deny where I see it going. But I see the podcast itself is at its core, create a better future, is always going to be there. Where I see this particular series going, I don't know if it will continue to be called a series or whether it just becomes an organic part of Epic Aotearoa, Create a Better Future, Who Dares Wins. I don't know, or in the service of others. Maybe there's a branding opportunity, or maybe there's just a separate section. But so I'm not exactly sure of that, because things are evolving as we go. And then at the same time, I feel like anyway that in the service of others, Who Dares Wins isn't a separate part. It may seem separate to the way I guess it might have been initially come about with regards to having these special forces operators or current serving, if we're lucky enough to have some current serving ones, come on and talk about these different aspects. But at the heart and at the core of what's happening is the same message. Its intent is to create a better future. So I don't know what we might need to do going forward in terms of a branding or whatever. I don't even know if it needs a rebrand, but I think from my side they work in tandem. They work parallel to each other. They don't sit above or below, but they're sitting side by side, and its application. So if I can lead on to what you're talking about there, where I see it, because I think this ties into the context of the Who Dares Wins piece. And Nick spoke about it. He spoke about, the SAS is a brand, and it is a brand. And we're not looking to try to copyright or steal anything from it. And this probably ties into the use of people's background and that sort of stuff when it comes to employment and all that sort of thing. But we'll come back to that. So coming back to the unit being a brand, it is. Who Dares Wins is more commonly known as, that's the slogan or the catchphrase or the tagline, whatever you want to call it, associated with the Special Air Service, Who Dares Wins. But in the context of and we spoke about this, but in the context of what we're doing for the podcast, in the service of others, Who Dares Wins, if I address in the service of others piece, there are so many people that actively, and dare I say, probably almost everybody is looking in some way, shape or form to serve others, is in the service of others. Whether you are a parent, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're a brother, whether you're a sister, whatever, you are in some way, shape or form in the service of others. Whether you're just so happen to be a special forces operator or a police officer or a first responder or whatever, or a business person, an entrepreneur, whatever it is, you are in some way connected to being in the service of others. And coming back to my earlier point about individuals and people having a connection to each other in some way. So that's the first piece, and I felt that would sit in nicely, but it's not exclusive. So it's not an exclusive group of people to be a part of this particular podcast. So it's not exclusive. Everybody, every single one of us in some way, shape or form is in the service of others. And therefore, in my mind, the last part of Who Dares Wins, yes, initially it was my connection to the unit. And I like that term, but I like what it represents to me. And at different times in my life, it has meant different things. Overarching, it's pretty much meant for me to be willing to put everything on the line. That's in a very basic, simplistic viewpoint of it from my side. But the who dares wins, if I was to look at that and having the understanding that or my perspective that I have of people being in the service of others, then the who dares wins applies to everybody in the same manner. So let me try to explain. So everybody in some way, shape or form is striving to serve others in whatever capacity that is. Who dares wins, many of those times you have to be and you will be prepared to put it all on the line. A parent is willing to put it all on the line for their child. A loved spouse is prepared to put it on the line for their spouse, to risk it all, to do whatever they feel necessary in order to succeed or to achieve that vision or that goal. A first responder is willing to put it all on the line. They're willing to risk their lives, whether they're abseiling or jumping out of a chopper into the ocean, or whether they're dangling off a rope or off the side of a building or whatever to rescue, or a cliff face to rescue somebody. They're willing to do that. A police officer is willing to step between the danger and the person that's being targeted in order to protect that person. Much like soldiers, much like whether you're a business owner or you're an entrepreneur, creating a platform or something comes with an inherent risk of you could potentially fail, and this can go south in pretty quickly and in a bad way. Like our podcast could fail epically. So instead of epic Aotearoa, it could be epic fail. But like you and I, and like any other business owner or people that are aspiring to and striving to with a sincerity to help and serve others, are willing to risk it on the line, put it all on the line, are willing to risk it all. And so because of that context and because of my perspective of that tagline, who dares wins, I'm associating that who dares wins to those people that are doing these things or that have done these things and that want to try to, as you mentioned, try to find another way or other ways to continue to pay it forward, to continue to help and serve others by being vulnerable, coming on our podcast for one, by admitting and talking about some of the things that they're not too proud of, the mistakes that they've made, and how they've tried to learn from those, or maybe how they're still trying to learn from those. And there's a massive amount of risk associated with doing that because it's not comfortable and it's not easy. And I know I haven't found it easy, and I haven't been comfortable with it. But in order to, and I'm getting more comfortable with it, but in order to achieve what we're trying to do and create a better future, pay it forward, to help others, to be in the service of others, and to live up to that final piece of who dares wins, I need to be, and we need to be willing to look like an idiot to some people to be able to achieve that. And if that helps us achieve that by even just influencing one person for the better, then we've done something good. We've done something worthwhile. So, yeah, hopefully that helps answer that, bro, from my side.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk with that 100%. That is just spot on. I mean, who dares wins? I mean, it's like you said, in my head that was associated with the unit.
With the unit.
Yeah. So, but then the more that we talked about it, the more we you got into the podcast, and the more that people shared their stories, it's so much bigger than the unit. And I mean that respectfully. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, totally respectfully. Because this is a mindset that anyone could apply. So this is taking learnings from one space that we could apply to our own space. And I guess we're morphing into that kind of the application a little bit of that, but I'll touch on that in a little bit later. Yeah. Is how do we then take that mindset, and what does that mindset mean for us, and to be able to do that? So that's really where I'm seeing this going. Whether, like you said, whether it morphs into something separate or whether it stays the same. You know what? To be honest, I don't really care. Yeah. And because this is people have voted with their energy, with whatever it is that they want to vote with, whether it's likes or what have you. That's, or listens. We're not too fussed about it. We look at the numbers and go, that's. It's funny because we look at the numbers, both of us, and we go, oh yeah, cool. It's like, wow. but it's not like we're driven by them. We're not driven by the likes or the views or whatever you call it. We just want to get the message out. And I think however that takes, and this is, you actually reminded me that this is an entrepreneurial mindset. Right now we're persevering with what we're doing because it's people are listening to it and they're connecting. Great. So we're helping a group. But if at some stage in time that requires a pivot, then that's something we'll revisit at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
Where it ends up, don't know yet.
Who knows?
But this is part of the journey.
Yeah, and those are great points because we are flexible with it, you and I, and that's not to say that we're just going to change and go with the breeze wherever that takes us. But the other key part as well with what you're saying is we're not concerned. Yeah, we'll look at the numbers because we can see, oh wow, there's that many people that have taken the time to have a listen. Now they may not have listened to the whole thing or a particular full session or whatever, but each time I look at them and each time you and I look at them, we see it as an opportunity that, man, I wonder if it's helped that person.
Yes.
I wonder if it's helped one of those people that have taken the time. That would be so cool if it's helped one of them. And the other part to that is that we love what we're doing. And I think that's a very cool space to be in. It's a very strong place and foundation to be persevering from, because if you're loving what you're doing, then it's not seen as a chore and it's not seen as something that's hard to get out of bed for or whatever. Like I'll get up early, get my training and go to work, do a full day at work, come back, and then I have the opportunity to connect with you to talk about what's happening or to interview a guest, which we've got a few guests coming up, and just be totally re-energized and loving what happens. And so when you're loving what it is that you're doing, and we're on the path that we're on in terms of the sincerity behind what we're trying to do, it's a really strong place to be coming from, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I guess this is probably the part where we do this shameless plug and shout out to Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, or anyone else that wants to sponsor us for multiple millions of dollars. Right here, right, both of us, right here.
Well, we know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. Anyway,
good try though, Brian.
Good try. Okay. Oprah Winfrey, just in case you're listening.
Well, we already spoke about with Nick, didn't we? Was it Will Ferrell or something?
Well, Will Ferrell. Yeah. Will Ferrell.
Steal. I think Nick was on the a line about you can steal other people's stuff or whatever, and that's true.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Will Ferrell hasn't come back to me, so I guess it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into some of these messages. So I think this is a nice space to do that, and we've got a handful of messages we want to share. So I'll read out.
Yeah, I reckon
here's one. I'll read this out, and this is a really nice message. It says, "Hi team. Another awesome podcast with Dr. Bestick. I couldn't stop listening for the full 3 hours, even though I only intended to listen for the first half hour today." Whoa. So there was, what was it? 3 hours?
Yeah.
About 3 hours? Yeah. So,
over 3 hours. Yeah.
Some really fantastic takeaways, and my notebook was quickly filled up with bits of wisdom. Would love to hear more from the NZ SAS operators in particular. The anecdotes, the lessons are both hilarious and also incredibly engaging. Keep it up. Loving the content. And that's from Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it. That's anecdotes, not antidotes, by the way.
That's an antidote for the way I speak. Sorry, bro.
Yeah. What was it from NZSA's operators? In particular, the anecdotes. And you've got, in particular, the antidotes. I was like, what the heck? Antidotes?
Blinking. You just marry fella.
No, but that's cool, eh? Like, we've been just collecting these. We'll only read out probably maybe one or two more. I'm going to read one here because this one sort of hits close to home. And we've got the permission from these people to just share their first name. So we didn't want to go putting out their first and last name and their Instagram handle and all that sort of stuff. But this one here was cool. I really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed all the ones. But it says, "Kia ora, Joe and Brian. I've recently discovered your podcast and it has changed my whole way of thinking. I'm a former 1RNZIR soldier, 5 years between 2009 and 2016. So 1RNZIR holds a special place in my heart for me. So this person continues to say, served on operations in East Timor, 2011, and current police officer in NZ. I've been in a rut for the last 2 years, just doing the bare minimum, just surviving. But after hearing your conversation with Bill Bestick, again to Bill, so these ones were quite early, these messages that we got, I realised I've been limiting myself. Since hearing your stories, I have reassessed my goals, set targets and begun work towards those goals. I have aspirations to join the AOS and then on to STG as an operator. Even my time in the army, I had quietly wanted to head towards SAS, but always wrote those aspirations off before even trying, let alone training for. Again, thank you for this, kaupapa. You have no idea what this has done for me. I look forward to hearing more amazing stories. Ngā mihi, Shane. And so, wow. Yeah, pretty powerful stuff, man. I mean, you've got, and I think there's one more that you're probably going to read, but we've got these people out here within our community. And granted, these are people here from NZ at this stage, which is cool. It doesn't matter where they come from. But the messages that are being shared and the way that the guests are doing that is hitting the mark in terms of what we're trying to do. Now, here's a guy here, and this one that I was lucky enough to read was Shane, who's been in a rut, who's now just heard something, and he's gone, man, I have been limiting myself here. And now he's taking that information and he's applying it, and he's set goals and targets for what he's going to do. And I love that about what Shane has shared. And so shout out Shane. He knows who he is. We got his surname, but I won't mention his surname in here because he's obviously a current serving police officer and that sort of thing. And just really grateful that you would take the time to share what you've gleaned from and how it's encouraging you or motivated you to take some positive action. So kia ora, Shane. Appreciate that.
Kia ora. Yes. I've got one more, and that is this is from Matt. And Matt goes, kia ora, Joe. I'm a former NZDF soldier mechanic of 5 years and serving police officer since 2005. Awesome. Thank you. As a response sergeant and former AOS member, I've been part of several close-knit teams. I've experienced things that have changed who I am for better and for worse, and I can say that I still love my job. In saying that, there have been many challenges. I have listened to your podcast with Bill Bestick twice. Wow. And Dion once, soon to be twice.
Wow.
Gee. These podcasts are the absolute best things I've ever listened to. Numerous things resonate with me and have reset things in my mind that make me want to bring my best to my team. There were a number of gems I took away as someone who wants to be an effective leader, such as understanding who you are firstly, not seeking things that are easily achieved, selecting a mindset, being prepared for your own internal battle, doing the most important thing first, starting a culture, recognizing that failure has the highest yield regarding triggers for learning. That's powerful. Recognizing that there is a direct link between productivity and how you make someone feel. That trauma is a step towards growth. There are many more which I've noted down. Just so many great messages which I am taking away. Thank you so much for sharing this with us all. There are so many of us who will benefit from this sharing of knowledge and experience. Matt. Kia ora, Matt.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Matt. And it turns out, so Matt and I share some common ground in terms of the Defence Force side of things. We were a part of the same BASIC, but we weren't in the same platoon. But yeah, it's interesting when he reached out and then, to take the time to share that information. Really hits the old heart and the mind in terms of confirming that what we're doing is helpful, and we really want it to just continue in that same fashion. And hopefully, if we can. And I think I touched on this with you maybe in an earlier catch-up that we had. If we can get more of the Kiwi guys on, whether they're unit operators or whether they're police or whether they're whatever, first responders, business owners, that sort of thing, that will have, some really good impacts for those here, because it's probably a bit more relatable and maybe easier to understand because there's that commonality of countrymen and women and that sort of thing. That might be helpful. But yeah, I like the comments that Chris shared. They'd like to hear more, obviously, from guys that have served in the unit here. and so would I, and I think you would too.
Yep.
And so obviously our people, our audience and stuff, are keen to hear more about that as well. So it's a great tool, I feel, and we feel, in terms of being able to help others to take what they can and then use it to create a better future. So hopefully that sparks a bit more, or provides a bit more clarity around what we're doing, if anything.
Yeah, beautiful. And we're open to these messages as well. I mean, that's not to say we're actively seeking them, but these are things that just help Joe and I to be able to understand if we're on the correct path, or we're heading in the right way, and that if it's touching one person, that's all we're worried about. It's one person, one story, one organization. All right, so I guess we've just got a couple of things left to talk about. I guess the first thing that we want to address is around promotions, because this has come up in I think maybe a podcast or two, around background and promotion activity type of thing. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts about that, and seen some of the, particularly as we go on video.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. Aside from the shameless plug that you tried to put in there, we'll leave it in there. It'll just be because it can't be, I don't have time to go doing the editing, and just a couple of things. When you spoke about the systems, here it is, here's the system. You're looking at them, you and I. This is the system. So wish us luck, everybody.
Yeah, good luck.
But anyhow, on that, promotion and branding, it's a really good point, because I had a conversation with a former member of the New Zealand Special Air Service, and it was raised or brought to this person, his attention, that comments around I think along the lines of, oh look, you're trying to use your background or whatever to promote your business and that sort of stuff. Now I don't know all the context behind it, and to be honest, I didn't ask, because for one, immediately and initially, it just sort of annoyed me that he would be that sort of thing would be said to him. Now I don't know all the details, and I'm not really interested in wanting to know all the details, but I'd be happy to have a conversation with whoever the person is or was, if they wanted to, and if they feel that people are using their background, let's say in this context, let's keep it with this context of being a former Special Air Service operator, for personal gain. Well, my honest thought and response to that would be, what's wrong with that? In my own head, I'm like, how's that any different to if I structure my CV and I put down in my resume all these things that I've done in relation to a job, or if I'm approaching a client because I want to win that client to come under my service and pay me for the service that I'm going to provide for them. And these are the distinguishing attributes and skills and knowledge and experience and expertise that I bring. And this is the reason why it's going to cost you so much for me, or whoever the case might be. So that's one part. I don't see any difference to formulating a CV to put my best foot forward, or to create a positive impression as well as I can to a potential employer or to a potential client. And to Bill's point that he mentioned, he said, and he actually encouraged people that are still serving in the unit to keep an eye out on what's out there and what you might want to do post your life in the unit, because sadly it doesn't last forever. And as Bill has witnessed, and many other people have witnessed as well, when you leave, there's not a lot of wraparound support or ongoing support for you and or your family, and that's just the reality, and that's fine. Like, we're volunteering and we're going into that eyes wide open, understanding that. But don't be upset with people that are going to be having one eye out and looking, okay, man, I wouldn't mind doing that after. What do I need to do? Same way they've taken the steps to prepare themselves to join the SAS in this example. There's nothing wrong with taking those same steps and having a look out and going, man, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a pilot, or I want to do this, I want to do that. What do I need to do? Oh, cool. I'm piecing these things and strategically planning exit strategy or exit plan or whatever. That's a common term in business and stuff like that people use and that people do actually plan for. There's a whole bunch of people that build businesses purely with the intent to sell it on. So that's the exit strategy. Build it to a certain point, scale, blah, 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 and then bang, hey, here we go. We're open for business, come and buy us, sort of thing. So in that, it did annoy me, but then I tried to, and I haven't come up with an answer yet, but I tried to gain some sort of understanding in terms of where the person might be coming from. And the only thing that came to mind was maybe they're thinking that what we're doing with this podcast or what they might share on the podcast might compromise the integrity or the security of the unit. And I like to think that so far it hasn't. Like the stuff that's been shared, it has already on. All they need to do is go and have a look at documentaries and stuff that are out there. But the stuff that isn't shared is the individual stories again, and their connections and how they approach those challenges or how they dealt and handled those situations. That you can't get on a documentary or anything that's been posted so far unless somebody's taken the time to be sat down, interviewed, and had those open conversations like what we're trying to have with former operators on here and or other people that will be fortunate enough to have, because the upcoming guests, as an example, are not all of them are former operators in the SAS, so they bring some other uniqueness but still fit in the service of others who dares wins mold as far as we're concerned. So back to the question at hand about the promotion and stuff, I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. I think if anything, hopefully to a potential client or an employer or people that might be listening would go, wow, it takes a heck of a lot of not only courage, but it takes a heck of a lot of integrity to join a unit like that. And if you've got those things, or even if you've just got integrity with that, there's a lot to be said for that. There's almost without trying to sound boastful or anything like that, because none of the people in the unit or that have served in those units are, and this isn't just applicable to guys in the SAS. I'm just using this as the example because it was a former SAS operator who'd been posed with this question or had this question put to him. There's a certain amount of a level of understanding and respect that automatically comes to a person that's either serving or served in the unit, I've noticed, and I've found anyway, not because they've gone seeking it or not because it's expected. It's just, I don't know, that information that's out there and people's perception or understanding of it, much like how mine and Bill's was when we were younger and he was 7 and just wanted to stand in their presence, as he was speaking about. And those sorts of things, there's a level of respect towards people that have served in there, rightly or wrongly. That's just something that I've noticed. Not always the case. Like some people you come along go, SAS, what's that? Saturday and Sunday? Well, what does that mean? So, and I heard that from one of the guys he was the training officer on my cycle. Good man. But so that Saturday and Sunday comment has always run through in my head because a lot of people say, what does that mean? But with that, one of the experiences that I'll share here before I try to wrap up was there was a guy in his sandy beret, sky blue belt, wing dagger, walking, and I was still in battalion. We were hanging out outside our Victor Company barrack lines, and he was there because he was doing a trade changing to an engineer, and a very staunch, fit, strong looking guy. And I'm still just this junior plebe, so I'm not long in battalion. But I recognised the sky blue belt. I recognised the sandy beret coming from a distance. There's just something about this individual walking, and there was probably 4 or 5 of us. And I didn't realise, I found out who he was later. He was a trooper, because then he was one of the staff on my selection for a time there. And he come marching, just walking straight through, coming to walk through us to go to wherever it was he was going at the time. And all of us, like, we got up and stood to attention and stood off on the side. Like, he's a trooper. He's the same rank as us, except he's a private equivalent, but a trooper. We stood up. We must have looked. It must have just made him crack up. But he walked past, cool as, and he goes, "Hey boys," and then just carried on walking past. And we were like looking at each other, going, "What did we stand to attention for?" It's like he's just. Anyway, we laughed about it, and it was. But those things. And not that I've come across any civilians that have ever done that to people in the unit, but just that. I guess what I'm trying to get at is there is a level of respect given what the individual has gone through and to do the things that they've done and it's not something that's sought after or that's expected, but it does happen. And so therefore, anybody using their background, saying, hey, I was former whatever, in order to gain a client, get a job, win a promotion, whatever the case, well, maybe not so much a promotion, it's probably the wrong context, but to do those things, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think, if anything, you should be proud of that history that you hold. Now, whether that's an SAS operator, whether that's pilots, whatever it is, whether you're a mother, a father, you should hold on to that, be proud of that, acknowledge it, recognize it. It's a part of their life and what they've lived and what they've done. And so if that question had been thrown at me, it might have resulted in an argument, to be fair. But those are my responses to that sort of question. I don't know. What's your take be as somebody that hasn't served in the unit? How would you feel if somebody with their, and don't just try and tell us or tell me what I want to hear, but if there was somebody that had that background or special forces background and they were to put that in that CV, landed in front of you, and they've got that plus skills to be a tester or whatever, a trainer and delivering knowledge in that space of what you do, like, would you think that the person is just trying to toot their own horn or beat their own drum? Or
No, I've actually had that. I've had that in CVs when I've been hiring different engineers in the IT space, and there's one particular guy who obviously won't remain nameless, but CV came across my desk. I looked at it, and he talked about his time in the. I think he was regular Australian Army. So, and then he went. What do they call it now? Reserves. So Army Reserve now. But then he talked about his skill set. Yeah, I think did he spend time on the what do you call it? Is it the LAV? LAV? Yeah.
Light armored vehicles. Yeah.
Yep. So he spent time on that. So he was qualified on that and the weapon systems on that. And he described that. But when I spoke to him, he didn't bring it up. But as part of his CV, as part of his skill set, it got my attention because if he's done that, I know the discipline behind that, the rigor behind that. So that gave me the attention to know that this guy is not just going to be a wishy-washy somebody that comes in and floats around and it's not going to give me anything solid. This guy's solid. So I brought that in. That helped me solidify that. Now, of course, when it came to the interview, a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right. So, but again, he was not. I had to prompt him for that. He didn't volunteer for it. The background behind it, I wanted to know. But, we didn't proceed any further. There was other reasons behind it, but I saw no reason why he didn't. Why it's not there. It's skill.
Yeah.
It's just like being able to use a microphone or talk.
Hey, easy.
Oh, sorry. To qualify using a microphone.
Don't come here if you want to qualify to use a microphone.
or what have you. These are skills. These are things, and use them in our space. Epic Aotearoa, create a better future. The kaupapa is create a better future for one individual, one family, one organisation, one community, one country, one planet, whatever. So if that means that you have the opportunity to express yourself and to share a bit of promotion, well, great. Down under, and I'm talking Australia, New Zealand, we're not going to go, oh, look at me, wave my flag, I'm all this, but we will subtly share something because I think that's important, and we're open to that. I think that's evident that we're open to people to be able to talk about or promote themselves in a way that we can connect with, that we're happy with. If we weren't, we would say. And
if we did have guests that were all about that self-promotion, I'm this, I'm that, well, that podcast is probably never going to see the light of day. So.
That's it. Delete. So, if we're ever advertising and it's just over the top, so just shout out to Woolies, as a sponsor. No.
Woolies.
So it's the only bottle I've got on hand.
No labels, B.
No labels. No labels. Oh,
no labels. There you go. Get rid of that thing. Take the label off.
All right, I'll take my label off. But that's the point. To get serious with that is, you're right. we've got no problem with it. If we did have a problem with it, we would say.
Yeah.
And if it just went OTT, self promotion, then it just wouldn't reach the light of day.
Yeah, and if it got to that stage, well, you and I would need to give ourselves some good uppercuts for even letting it get to that stage, because I guess systems, for want of a better term, our system is us having a conversation with people and connecting. So we either know them or we know people that know the person and have recommended them. And for us, in terms of a system and making it streamlined and efficient, it's very efficient, because if Brian says Bob is good, then Bob is good.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's sort of how we're rolling.
Same with you. Yeah. I think I said that the other day. Yeah, if you say that person X is good, I don't need to know anymore. That's it. Yeah. All right. Awesome, bro. I got one last thing, I guess, and just to wrap all of this up, some really great discussion we've had so far. Then I guess final thoughts, and then we'll call it.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess it's looking at, then we've talked about the intent and the purpose of Who Dares Wins the series in the service of others, where we see it going, and some of the wonderful messages, and we appreciate those messages. We've talked about some of the challenges. We've talked about some of the insights and surprises that you've experienced, and particularly more so yourself, my friend. And we've talked about just then the promotions side of things and how that works. But I guess now, if we were to sum up the application of Who Dares Wins in the service of others, if you could think of, say, 3 ways in which we could apply some of these learnings, what do you think would come to mind?
And applying, what's that? Applying the Who Dares Wins mindset, you mean? Or
the mindset and the things that we've taken from some of these or all of these podcasts, and to be able to sum it up into 3 takeaways that we can then jump out. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's interesting, because what immediately came to my mind was Dion's words and the stuff that he's done around the VIP of mental health. So, and maybe it's because of the 3-pronged approach that you mentioned. What are 3 things that we could take and do, or try to do? So if I was to try to sum that up, and in combination of the podcast that we've been lucky enough to facilitate so far, and the messages that our guests have shared, which has been, it's just been fucking awesome. Immediately, value, identity, and purpose come to mind. And so if people could grab anything from the Who Dares, from the in the service of others, to connecting the Who Dares Wins aspect and being prepared to risk it all, fail. And I love what Bill said. Well, how many times did you try? How many times did you take the test? Oh, I took it once. Well, you haven't failed. You just gave up. You quit. So grabbing the VIP, grabbing the Who Dares Wins, in the service of others, Who Dares Wins, and applying that to the, okay, what value do I have? What value do I think I have? And if you feel like, so for those that might be wired like me, or like you and I, or like others that will go, oh, I don't, I just do this. Like, this is all I do. This is, I don't think I do anything special. And that may be how you view yourself, but I'm willing to bet, actually I'd guarantee that the other people in your life see a very different picture, see a very different Brian, see a very different me, you see a different, whoever that person is. So if you could grab that Who Dares Wins and look at your value, if you don't feel like you can identify what your value is, have the courage and have the conversation with, whether that's your loved ones or your family or your friends or your colleagues or whoever. Reach out to them and go, hey, and however that conversation comes about, mate, what do you think I'm good at? Or how have why are you friends with me? Like, find a way to have that conversation. Why are you friends with me? What is it about me, or what is it about us that you think makes us click, or that you think makes us get along? Or if it's your spouse, why did you choose me? I don't know what it is. Your children, why do you love me? Or whatever, and whoever you speak to, but either have the conversation, if you can't grab a pen and a paper and jot down what value you think you add. your identity. Well, if you listen to my conversation with Dion, I think I'm struggling in that department. so identity of self and being comfortable when you look in the mirror. And I spoke with Dion. I said, bro, I'm comfortable when I look in the mirror. Like, I know who I am. I'm Joe Hotai. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I love the work that I do. I try to be a good friend, all these sorts of things. Like, I'm just Joe Hotai. Like, that's who I am in terms of my identity and trying to be a good person. So he's given me some tasks to do, and which I probably won't talk about. And actually, I don't mind. So he's given me 3 questions to go through and find a quiet place and go through those, because I said, bro, is there something else that I'm supposed to do? Is there something else that I'm missing here? Because I feel really good. And yes, although I know that I have a stronger connection to my purpose and my value that I'm trying to bring, like, I'm really comfortable with my identity. That's just me and where I'm at in this chapter of my life. So again, in the service of others, grab that Who Dares Wins, identify, go through your identity and be comfortable with that. When you look in the mirror, are you comfortable and happy with what you see? Or are you embarrassed or ashamed or disappointed? If you are, that may be, and I'm just speaking here because I know it was for me, but that may be an easier place to start. Not necessarily the best place to start, but maybe it's easier. So I know for me, I'm very terrible at communication and speaking with my spouse, very good at burying and hiding things, and all those things in the past. When I was looking at those, I was like, man, that is not healthy. It's not good for me. It's not good for my family. It's clearly not good for my family, because my children don't know how to communicate with me. And my expectations were way too high. So yeah, go through that process, grab all of those things. Are you prepared to risk it all? Are you prepared to have that hard conversation and own those mistakes and all those faults? That's probably enough on there. And then the purpose part, finding that, like we talked about, we're really loving what we're doing. Is it meant to be our full purpose? I don't know. I've been really pleased, or been really humbled by a lot of the comments that we've received and that I've received personally in relation to our podcast. People have said nice things. Oh man, it really suits you, or you're a natural podcaster, or whatever. I don't feel like a natural podcaster or anything like that. And I don't know what a natural podcaster is supposed to feel like. But what I do know is that I'm really enjoying it. No, I'm loving it, actually, not just enjoying it. I genuinely love it. So that, for me, that old, or not that old saying, but the saying that I saw, allow your passion to become your purpose and it will one day become your profession. I love that quote and saying. So grab those things from the podcast or from wherever you grab your resources and information from, and apply that Dion Jensen value, identity, and purpose, that matrix, to that you can go out and do tomorrow or tonight even, and do that VIP and go, what's my value, my identity, what am I passionate about, what's my purpose, what do I want to do, and maybe start there. Those are probably 3 things that hopefully it helps in response to your question that you've asked.
Beautiful.
One last part, sorry, I needed to mention this as well. I probably should have mentioned it when we were reading out the messages, but one of the interesting things has been we've received a couple of communications and messages, vastly different ends of the age when it comes to the age spectrum. So I'm not going to mention their names, but a 40-year-old who's reached out and said, would I be able to apply to join the SAS? And so I've taken the time to reply, and it was quite funny. His reply goes, oh, heck, I wasn't expecting you to reply. But, here's an individual that has listened to the podcast who said some nice words and then wants to go and do that. As a 40-year-old, do I think there's anything stopping them? No, I don't. I reflect on one of a very good friend who I've reconnected with back here. He was turning 39 on our cycle, or selection, or cycle. And easily, if not the fittest, one of the fittest, top 5, top 10 in our cycle, or top 5, top 3 actually in our cycle for fitness, overall well-rounded fitness and that sort of thing, and led by example. And here I am, this young Blinken, about to turn 21, way in the back, can hardly keep up with this guy. Now, the only caveat to that I mentioned to this particular person was that my friend, who was turning 39 then, had a number of years of experience in the army. So he's got a lot of background experience. He's got the basics and fundamentals down pat and all that sort of thing. Whereas this person is going to be coming straight from Civvy Street. So I said his best bet, is just to contact the NZDF recruitment and just hit them up, because I've been out of the game for far too long. I have no idea. But it's just interesting that a 40-year-old would contact with a desire to want to do that, to even be thinking in that frame of mind. Do I think they can do it? Absolutely. I think anybody could, with the right mindset. And I think that's the key difference, which has been talked about so many times with the guests that we've had. And the other one was the opposite end of the spectrum. There's a young fella, same question. And his question was, where are the best places, or where are some places in Auckland that I can go to practice my navigation? So again, out of the loop. I'm not sure where those best places would be. And so I reached out to a mate and said, hey, I've had this young fella ask me about this. And so in a few years' time, this particular individual plans on submitting his application. And great, I hope he does. I hope that person does. I'm not going to name them. But just to have them reach out and to ask, like, I can't not, or you and I can't not reply, even if it's a case of, sorry, brother, I have absolutely no idea, but I'll ask. So I didn't know the places that would be best to suit this young fella. So I contacted my mate and he sent me through some information, and then I just sent that on to the young fella.
Nice.
And said, hey, these are the places based on what guys that are currently serving have suggested if you want to do that. So it's great to be able to give back and do something as simple as that. Just replying to a message can, at least in my experience, can really make somebody's day. So that might be a fourth thing to take and do, just try to be considerate of people and try to make time for people as best you can.
I like that. That's awesome, bro. And of course, when it comes to practicing navigation, you just go straight over the feature, right?
Just follow your bearing. Just set your bearing and just hoof it, man. Just up, down, up, down. When you get better, then you can start map to ground and you can start taking little variants and then getting back on track. But
that's too fancy, bro. It's too fancy.
I think they're taking the easy way, I reckon.
Yeah, they're showing off.
Yeah, show offs. That's it. That's a better too. Yeah, show offs. Yeah, do it this way. Just go up, down, down.
Save energy.
I don't think that's what they were doing. They were saving their energy. You get a blinking muppet like me on there. It's just been good thing I did plenty of step-ups.
That's it. Brother, I really like that. So hearing the Dion Jensen, the VIP, and being mindful and kind to people, I think that's powerful. I guess just to add a little bit to that would be, again, really embrace that mindset. And you hear this in Bill's podcast, you heard it in Harry, you heard it in Nick, so the Who Dares winners, like, man, this is all I wanted to do. Boom. And it's just go for it, and I really, it's Nick's podcast that really resonated with me. It's like, particularly when talking about bandwidth and stuff, but it was really at the early stage, it's like, it just wasn't an option. Yeah. He's talking about the piece of paper, it just wasn't an option. And he said it didn't register with him. He just,
he probably dropped it and lost it, or ripped it up.
Where's that paper? Lost it.
But the good thing about that, it just didn't register with him. So he probably, because they handed them out to us, and I wasn't next to him when he got his, so I don't know what he did with it. But a lot of people that I know of that have been successful and gone through rip it up as soon as they get the opportunity. As soon as the DS isn't looking, like, that piece of paper is out of the pocket, ripped up, and just thrown away. Yeah.
Gee, they could save quite a bit of money on paper then.
This is why we run a fine line of having what people might refer to affectionately or unaffectionately to as tree huggers, going on there and going, hey, you're wasting the paper. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, some really good points. Sorry, bro, carry on with what you were saying.
No. I think that was it. Thank you. But that was the main thing. Okay. And one other thing is find your message. So when you were talking, actually the thought jumped in my head. It's like find your message. Right? So who dares wins is a great motto. It really encapsulates that mindset. But you need to find your own personal message, and that message becomes your medium. But behind that medium, and this is what I took away from Dion, is find those systems that work for you. You know, the things that will turn the mindset, the conceptual stuff, into the tangible stuff, like you did with Pack, Mortar Box, Never Ending Hill, or Endless Hill, or whatever you called it. Yeah, that's the system. Yeah. Right? So you need to be able to do that, I think.
That's a great point. Can I just share last couple of points here, please, B?
Sure.
So I just wanted to, I guess we take this opportunity. All the questions that you've asked have been great. It's a testament to why it's been so enjoyable for me and even more exciting for me having you involved in these conversations with these incredible people that we've had. But to your point around people finding what that who dares wins means to them, that's a great point, and I hope people can really take away what you've just mentioned there. Find the meaning to who dares wins and how that applies to you, whether that's to become the best baker in your profession, or the best chef, or the best driver, or the best whatever it is, doctor, lawyer, student, whatever stage in your life that you're in. As Bill mentioned, and as others have mentioned, that unrelenting pursuit of excellence, being analytical and at times I would say, very critical of ourselves, not because we're trying to put ourselves down or others down when you're having the conversation, but because we're constantly looking to try to improve. It's very easy to get caught up in the high fives and the things that we do well and the things that we've done well. And yes, there's a time and place to acknowledge those things, absolutely. But from my experience and from those others that have gone on to be quite successful, or even more successful than they might have even imagined, a lot of times they've focused in on the things that they aren't doing so well, the things that they could have done better. If I think of a sports person as an example, Kobe Bryant comes to mind. I'm just reading his book at the moment, and he saw all the flaws and weaknesses in his game, and instead of focusing on the things that he was good at and applying the things that he was good at, because he knew he could have dominated his opposition with the things that he was good at, he focused on all the things that he knew he wasn't very good at. Defense, he needed to do better. His footwork wasn't very good for a lot of things, and he focused in his jump shot. His mid-range jump shot and his threes weren't as good as what they could have been. So he focused on all of those things to the point where he just became this absolute complete player. Now, my favorite player is Michael Jordan. Not taking anything away from Jordan, the GOAT, but Kobe Bryant's certainly right up there. And probably just because I've been reading his book at the moment, it's really interesting to see that. So again, that's just another parallel or comparison of here's somebody extremely good at what they do. People acknowledge him and praise him. Go, man, he's so great at this. When sadly, rest in peace, Kobe, when he was with us. But here's somebody that looked at the things that he wasn't good at, self-critical of himself. How do I get better? And that is part of what that who dares wins mentality is. If that helps any of our listeners sort of listening to that or listening to this, and if they've gotten this far. And then the last part is the pausing to reflect, which I just wanted to speak on, because you spoke about that, but we probably didn't speak about this in as much detail, and it may be worth adding in the notes for this. The reason for the pause to reflect is, in line with the questions that you've shared, but there's been so much content and information come out of these podcasts that you and I felt, man, it might be quite overwhelming. There's quite a lot of stuff to just sort of take in, digest. As we've heard from Matt, was one of the guys who's been re-listening to some of the information again. And so that sent, I guess, a signal to you and I that, hey, this is great. We've got all these people that are wanting to come on, but how about we take some time? And you mentioned, hey, I like a pause to reflect. And I was like, that's it. So we've used this time. This will be what we upload on the Friday. It's not as exciting as having the guests and stuff, but hopefully there's value in it, because I think there's value in it. I've taken value from just pausing and reflecting, going back, listening to the podcasts that have been done in recent times with some of these. And I haven't gotten through everybody's just because of work and life and everything else that's happening. But taking that time to pause and reflect and really delve into the messages that have been shared by our guests so far as part of this particular series, you and I both felt that there's a lot of value in doing that. So that's why this pause to reflect, and if anything, go back to our audience that may be listening, go back and have a listen to those, take away some more, because you're about to be bombarded with a heck of a lot more information, and they're great, really awesome people coming up. And but also we've had the privilege of having some very exceptional and awesome people on the podcast so far. So yeah, I just wanted to not clarify, but just really emphasize that unrelenting pursuit in terms of finding what Who Dares Wins means for the individual, whatever that is. And the reason for this pause to reflect why there's no former SF operator or somebody else coming up this Friday. This is the reason for that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that. Before we look to wrap up, any final thoughts, comments that you'd like to share?
Oh, no, brother, I think I've shared my final thoughts. Probably my only last one would just be, again, to just acknowledge you for your work, your support, and what we're doing. And all the stuff that does happen. I talk about the system. It is literally you and I, but all the stuff that happens behind the scenes, which I'm really grateful for. And yeah, and to our audience, those are probably the last parts. The audience, everybody that's reached out and contacted. Some of them have contacted us from the Philippines, from America, from Australia, obviously, here within New Zealand and other parts of the world. It's been very, very humbling, eye-opening and reassuring to a degree that what we're doing is adding value in some small way to people's lives in whatever shape that is at the moment. So just a big thank you and shout out to all those people. They know who they are. It's not like we're inundated with hundreds and thousands of them, but the few that we've got, those people mean a lot, and we've replied to all of those people, and very, very grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. I totally agree with everything you said, in the sense that this wouldn't have happened without your energy and your drive, and be able to listen to the internal voice that said, hey, there's something here that I'm connecting with on a different podcast. This may be something we want to explore, and be able to share the messages and bring them to life. And this is what we're trying and attempting to do. But this doesn't work, of course, without everyone that's listening. So we appreciate your time, and hopefully you get further insights from others that as we go forward. So thank you, Aotearoa. Thank you, brother, for your wisdom and your sharing your insights and your thoughts over these last wee while. And thank you for those that will be listening and engaging. As Joe said, there is a lot more to come. So without further ado, and respectfully, as we say at the end of each Who Dares Wins in the Service of Others podcast, Who Dares Wins.
Who Dares Wins. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.